I would rather die than watch you marry the prince. Welcome to Army Stories. This is an original tale, carefully written, edited, and brought to life by Mika Gift. It is a story of love turned bitter, of loyalty broken, and of secrets so dark they can destroy even the strongest bonds. Two sisters, who once promised to protect each other with their lives, are now standing on opposite sides of fate. What could have possibly torn them apart? A man, a prince, and a decision that would change everything forever. Adunni has already crossed a line no one ever thought she would. In a moment of rage and desperation, she did the unthinkable. She turned her own sister, the same sister she once swore to protect, into a goat. But what Adunni doesn't know is that something far more dangerous is coming. A hidden truth. A secret so powerful it will shatter everything she loves, everything she believes in, and even her own destiny. But before we dive deeper into this unforgettable story, don't forget to subscribe, like, and drop a comment. Your support keeps these stories alive and motivates me to bring you even more powerful tales. And I'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Now, sit back, grab your chilled juice and popcorn, and let the story begin. In the quiet, dusty village of Ilé-Adó, where the wind carried the scent of earth and firewood, stood a small hut made of red mud. It was simple, fragile, yet full of life. Inside lived a man named Babatunde. Years of farming had bent his back into the shape of a bow, his hands rough and cracked from digging yams under the scorching sun. Life had not been easy for him, but he carried his struggles with silent strength. Beside him was his wife, Yosu, a hardworking woman whose hands were always stained with the smell of pepper and rich red palm oil. She moved with purpose, her eyes sharp, her spirit unbreakable. Together, they built a home filled not with wealth, but with love. They had two daughters, Adunni and Simi. Adunni, the firstborn, was impossible to ignore. Tall, bold, and striking, her dark skin glowed like polished cocoa under the sun. But it wasn't just her beauty, it was the fire within her. When Adunni looked at you, it felt like she could see straight into your soul. She was fearless, confident, and full of life. As the leader of the village dance group, she commanded attention. When she danced, her movements were powerful, hypnotic, so captivating that men often stood frozen, completely forgetting themselves. Then there was Simi, the complete opposite. Soft, quiet, and gentle, Simi was like a calm breeze on a hot day. She avoided noise and chaos, preferring peace and silence. Most days, you would find her sitting under the giant Iroko tree, her back resting against its ancient trunk. There, she would hum soft, sweet melodies, songs so soothing that even the restless village dogs would lie still, listening as if under a spell. Babatunde often smiled and said, "Adunni is my sharp cutlass, strong and fearless, always ready to protect us. But Simi is my cool water, the one who brings peace to my soul." One Friday afternoon, the sun burned hotter than ever before. It was the kind of heat that made people feel like their skin might peel away. The village market was alive with noise, voices shouting over each other, traders calling out their goods. "Buy your fresh fish. Red pepper. Hot red pepper." Amid the chaos, Simi sat quietly on a low wooden stool beside her mother, helping to sell palm oil. Sweat rolled down her face as the heat pressed down on her like a heavy blanket. Exhausted, she gently rested her head, trying to gather her strength. At that moment, a woman named Young walked past. She was a cloth seller, known throughout the village not just for her business, but for her pride. Young carried herself like she owned the world, her chin always raised, her eyes filled with arrogance. The unbearable heat had already put her in a foul mood. As she stormed past, her heavy foot struck Simi's container of palm oil. And in that single moment, everything began to change. Splash! The thick red palm oil burst across the ground, spreading like blood, and staining the woman's expensive wrapper. "My wrapper! Oh, my beautiful wrapper!" Young screamed, her voice sharp and cracked like a broken bell. The entire market seemed to pause for a second as her anger echoed through the air. Her eyes turned dark and cruel as they locked onto Simi. "You foolish girl. Look at what you've done. Are you blind?" she shouted, her voice dripping with rage and pride. Simi's body trembled instantly. Fear wrapped around her like a cold wind. Her lips shook as she struggled to speak. I am sorry, Mom, please, I will help you wash it." "Wash what?" Young snapped violently. Before Simi could even react, Young reached down and grabbed her ear, twisting it harshly. Pain shot through Simi's body like lightning. "Oh!" Simi cried out, her voice breaking as tears rushed to her eyes. And then, something changed. The air shifted. From across the busy market, a figure came rushing forward with unstoppable speed. It was Adunni. She ran like a hungry leopard, her feet pounding against the earth, her eyes burning with fury. Without hesitation, she stormed in and slapped Young's hand away from Simi. The sound echoed. Silence fell over the market. Even the traders stopped shouting. People froze, watching the scene unfold. Adunni stepped forward slowly, her presence commanding and dangerous. "If you touch her again," she said, her voice low and threatening, like a growling beast, "I will forget that you are an elder." She leaned in closer, her eyes cold and unblinking. "And I will tear that wrapper right off your body." A gasp rippled through the crowd. Young's mouth fell open in shock. You little rat. How dare you speak to me like that?" she stammered, her pride wounded. But Adunni didn't step back. Instead, she moved even closer. "This girl," she said firmly, pointing at Simi, "is my blood." Her voice hardened. "If you make her cry even one more tear, you will regret it." She paused, her eyes looking into Young's. "Try it. Touch her again, and see if you can walk home on your own two legs." For a moment, Young stood frozen. Then she saw it. Something dark, something dangerous, hidden deep inside Adunni's eyes. It was not fear. It was a warning. Young clicked her tongue loudly, adjusted her stain wrapper, and without another word, turned and walked away quickly, her pride bruised, but her fear stronger. The market slowly came back to life. Adunni immediately turned to Simi, her anger melting into concern. She knelt down in the dust, gently holding her sister's face in her hands. "Simi, why are you crying?" she asked softly. She leaned forward and placed a gentle kiss on her forehead. "As long as I am alive, nobody will hurt you. Do you hear me? Nobody." Simi nodded weakly, wiping her tears. "Come, let's go home." Far away, high above the village, stood the grand palace, majestic, powerful, but filled with tension. Inside, things were far from peaceful. King Oba Odi sat on his golden throne, coughing heavily into his hand. His body was weak, his face lined with age and worry. Time was slipping away from him, and he knew it. "Ajay," he called out, his voice rough. Moments later, the prince entered. Prince Ajay was a man many women dreamed of. Tall, strong, and handsome, with broad shoulders and a smile that could light up the darkest room. But today, that smile was gone. His face carried sadness. "Father, you called for me," he said respectfully. The king slammed his staff on the ground. "Yes, I called you," he snapped. "Look at me, I am old, weak, and dying. But you, what are you doing? Playing with dogs. Roaming the forest like a child." His voice rose with frustration. "Where is your wife? Where is the woman who will stand beside you as queen?" The prince lowered his eyes. "Father, the women you bring to me, they talk too much. They love gold, but they do not love me. I want something real. Someone real." The king stood up angrily. "I am tired of your excuses. He pointed his finger sharply. 2 days from now, there will be a grand dance competition in this kingdom. Every eligible maiden will attend. His voice became final, unshakable. The best dancer will become your wife. The prince's heart sank. That is my final word. With a heavy heart, Prince Ajia turned and walked away. He felt trapped. Like a goat being led to the market, waiting to be sold. The next morning, the loud beating of a drum shook the entire village awake. Come! 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 The town crier's voice echoed through the streets. People of Ilé-Adó, hear the words of the king. In 2 days, every maiden who can dance must come to the palace. The winner will become the next queen. Inside the small mud hut, Adunni's heart raced with excitement. Simi! Did you hear that? She shouted, her eyes shining. This is our chance. We are going to the palace. She grabbed Simi's hands eagerly. I am the best dancer in this village, I will win. And I will teach you too. We will change our lives forever. But Simi slowly pulled her hands away. Her face was filled with fear. Sister! I don't want to go, she said quietly. I don't like crowds, and why should we dance for a man we don't even know or love? No. Adunni snapped, her voice rising. I am doing this for us. We are poor, Simi. Her eyes burned with determination. Don't you want a better life for Mama and Baba? You must come with me. Simi shook her head softly. I am not going. The room fell silent. The two sisters stared at each other. And for the first time, a small crack formed in their unbreakable bond. Days passed. Adunni trained tirelessly, dancing under the hot sun until sweat soaked her body and her muscles screamed in pain. She pushed herself harder each day, chasing her dream. Meanwhile, Simi walked quietly to the river. She sat on a large rock and began to sing softly, a gentle song about a little bird too afraid to fly against the wind. As her voice floated across the water, an old woman approached slowly. My child, the woman said weakly, please, may I have some water? My throat is dry. Without hesitation, Simi offered her water. Mama, let me walk with you, she added kindly. You look very tired. She supported the woman, guiding her along the path with care and patience. After a while, the old woman stopped. My child, thank you, she whispered. From her cloth, she brought out a small, mysterious bag and placed it in Simi's hands. This is my secret powder, she said softly. You can use it to become anything you desire. Simi frowned in confusion. I don't understand. The old woman smiled. She took a small pinch of the powder and sprinkled it over herself. Poof! In an instant, she transformed into a young, stunning woman. Simi gasped, her eyes wide with shock. Think of what you want, and pour it on yourself, the woman said gently. And just like that, everything was about to change. And just like that, the old woman was gone. No footsteps. No sound. It was as if she had never been there. Simi stood frozen for a moment, her heart racing, her hands tightly gripping the small mysterious bag. The wind blew gently across the river, but her mind was far from calm. What just happened? She whispered to herself. Snapping out of her thoughts, she quickly grabbed her water pot, filled it, and hurried back home, her feet moving fast against the dusty path. When she reached the hut, she found Adunni in the open space outside, dancing joyfully in front of their parents. Her waist moved with power and grace, her feet beating the ground in rhythm as their mother clapped proudly. Simi rushed forward. Sister! Sister, she called urgently. Adunni stopped mid-spin, breathing heavily but smiling. What is it? She asked. Without wasting a second, Simi grabbed her hand and pulled her inside the hut. Her face was serious, almost frightened. She opened her palm slowly and revealed the small bag. An old woman gave me this, she said softly. She said, it can change me into anything I want. Adunni's smile faded instantly. What? She showed me, Simi continued, her voice shaking slightly. She poured a little on herself, and she turned into a young woman right before my eyes. Adunni's eyes widened in shock. For a moment, she said nothing. Then her expression hardened. This is not a gift, she said quietly. This is dangerous. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. Simi, listen to me. You must not tell anyone about this. Not even a whisper. If the wrong person hears about it, it could destroy us. Simi nodded quickly. Together, they carefully hid the magic powder deep inside the hut, in a place no one would ever think to look. But neither of them knew that this small secret would soon change their lives forever. Days passed quickly. And then, the day of the great competition arrived. Adunni woke up before sunrise, her heart filled with excitement and ambition. She dressed in her finest clothes, tying her wrapper tightly around her waist. She adorned herself with beautiful beads that clicked softly as she moved. Her mother, Yosu, clapped happily, her face glowing with pride. Look at my daughter, she said. You shine like a queen already. Adunni stepped outside, lifted her chin, and admired her reflection in a small mirror. She smiled. Today, her life would change. She turned to Simi. Sister, come with me, she said warmly. Even if you don't dance, come and watch me. Come and see how I take my place. But Simi slowly shook her head. I cannot go to the palace, she said softly. I will go to the river instead. I want to fetch enough water before you return. Adunni frowned slightly, but then waved it off. Do as you wish, she said. But when I win, everything will be different. With that, Adunni walked toward the grand golden palace. And Simi walked toward the quiet river. Two paths. Two destinies. At the palace, chaos had already begun. King Oba Odi's voice thundered through the halls. Where is he? Where is my son? He roared, his anger shaking the walls. The royal guards stood trembling. Kobiyisi, one of them stuttered. The prince's room is empty, he has left the palace. We cannot find him anywhere. The king's face darkened with fury and fear. He walked to the balcony and looked down. Thousands of people had gathered. Girls from different villages stood proudly, dressed in bright colors, beads, and fine wrappers. The drums were already beating loudly. If the people discovered the prince was missing, it would be a disgrace. They will laugh at me, the king hissed. His eyes scanned the guards until they stopped on one man, tall, strong, and from a distance, almost resembling the prince. Oja, the king called. The man stepped forward. Yes, Kobiyisi. Put on the prince's royal robe, the king ordered immediately. Cover your face with the royal veil. You will sit in his place today. Oja froze. My king. This competition must happen, the king snapped. There is no time for questions. And just like that, a lie was born inside the palace. Meanwhile, at the river, Simi sat peacefully on her favorite rock, her voice flowing like music through the air. Oh, the wind is strong, but my wings are small, she sang softly. She closed her eyes, lost in her melody. She did not know that someone was watching her. Hidden behind a large tree stood a man dressed in simple hunting clothes. It was Prince Ajay. He had run away from the palace, tired of pressure, tired of expectations, searching for peace. And instead, he found her voice. He stood still, completely captivated. But suddenly, his eyes widened. A snake. Long, thin, green like fresh grass, slithering silently towards Simi's bare foot. Danger was only seconds away. The prince didn't think. He didn't hesitate. In a flash, he jumped out from behind the tree and slammed his hunting stick onto the ground, pinning the snake instantly. "Do not move," he shouted. Simi screamed and jumped back, her heart pounding wildly. The prince quickly threw the snake far into the bushes. "It's gone," he said gently. "You're safe now." Simi's chest rose and fell rapidly as she looked at him. Tall. Strong. Calm. His eyes were kind, comforting. You saved me," she said softly. "Thank you, kind stranger." The prince looked at her face. And for a moment, he forgot how to breathe. She was more beautiful than anyone he had ever seen. "I'm just a man who loves the forest," he said, hiding his true identity. "What is your name?" he asked. "I am Simi," she replied shyly. "And you?" "Odi," he said after a pause. They sat together by the river, talking as if they had known each other forever. They spoke about simple things, the smell of rain, the beauty of the stars, the quiet peace of nature. Two strangers. But their souls felt connected. Back at the palace, Adunni stood among the dancers. She looked powerful, confident, unstoppable. When her turn came, the drums roared. And as she stepped forward, the entire crowd went silent. Adunni didn't just dance. She became the rhythm. Her waist moved like flowing water, her body like fire. She spun, jumped, and glided with perfection. It was breathtaking. Above, seated on the royal throne, the prince, who was actually Oja in disguise, watched silently from behind the veil. And in that moment, fate was quietly setting the stage for everything to fall apart. The entire crowd held its breath as Adunni stepped into the center of the circle. And then, she moved. Her body flowed like fire and water at the same time. Every step, every twist of her waist, every leap into the air matched perfectly with the beating drums. It was more than a dance, it was power, beauty, and command. No one blinked. No one spoke. They simply watched, completely lost in her rhythm. And when it ended, Adunni dropped to her knees in the dust, her chest rising and falling, sweat pouring down her glowing face. For 1 second, silence. Then, the crowd exploded. "Adunni! Adunni! Queen of dance," they roared, their voices shaking the ground itself. The king slowly rose from his throne, a wide smile spreading across his face. In that moment, he didn't care that his real son was missing, he didn't care about the truth. All he saw was victory. A girl who could make his kingdom look strong. "The prince has chosen," the king declared loudly, his voice echoing across the palace grounds. "This girl, Adunni of Ilé-Adó, will be his bride." Cheers erupted again. "In 7 days," he continued, "we will go to her father's house with gifts. And the wedding will be the greatest this land has ever seen." Adunni's heart felt like it would burst. She slowly lifted her eyes toward the prince seated on the throne. His face was hidden behind a dark veil, but it didn't matter to her. She bowed deeply, her forehead nearly touching the dust. "I will be a good wife," she whispered softly. In her mind, she had won everything. But in reality, she had just been promised to a man wearing a mask. That evening, the sun melted into the horizon, painting the sky in deep shades of orange and gold. Adunni ran all the way home, her feet barely touching the ground, her heart filled with excitement. When she entered the hut, Simi was already there, sitting quietly by the fire. A soft, almost magical glow rested on her face. "Adunni! Adunni!" Simi cried, jumping up and hugging her tightly. "I won!" Adunni shouted with joy. "The prince chose me. The king himself called my name. In 7 days, I will be the wife of the most powerful man in the land. Simi hugged her back, smiling gently. I am happy for you, sister, truly. You work so hard for this. But her thoughts were still at the river. Adunni pulled back slightly, studying her face. And you? She asked. Your eyes look different. What happened today? Simi's cheeks turned warm. I met someone, she said softly. A hunter, his name is Odi. Her voice became lighter, almost dreamy. He saved me from a snake. And he is the most handsome man I have ever seen. His voice is like music. When I am with him, I feel like I am the only girl in the world. Adunni laughed lightly, brushing her hand over Simi's shoulder. Oh, Simi, a hunter, she teased. You and your simple heart. She smiled confidently. Let him make you happy for now. But soon, you will come with me to the palace. You will see real men, and you will forget your forest boy. Simi shook her head slowly. I don't think I will ever forget him, she whispered. That night, the two sisters lay side by side. Adunni closed her eyes and dreamed of gold, power, and a shining crown upon her head. Simi drifted into dreams of the river and the gentle touch of the hunter's hand in hers. Both were smiling. Both were happy. But both were living inside a lie. Inside the palace, the truth was far darker. The real prince was locked inside a room, his fist banging against the heavy wooden door. You will get married in 7 days, the king shouted from outside. I will never love the girl you chose, the prince fired back, his voice filled with anger and frustration. But the king had already made his decision. And there was no turning back. The next morning, sunlight crept into Babitondi's small mud hut. Adunni was already awake. Excitement burned inside her as she spread all her colorful wrappers across the floor, searching for the most beautiful one. Simi, look, she said, holding up a fine piece of cloth. When I walk into that palace as a bride, I want even the sun to be jealous of my glow. Simi smiled softly. You will make a beautiful queen, sister. Soon, the king's messengers arrived. They marched proudly into the compound, carrying gifts, huge yams, strong goats, shining beads, and expensive wrappers that felt like silk. Babitondi's chest swelled with pride. My daughter is the chosen one, he declared happily. Yosu's face shone with joy. We are no longer just sellers of oil and pepper, she said. We are the family of the queen. Adunni stood tall beside them, her chin lifted high, her eyes filled with pride and power. But as laughter and celebration filled the air, Simi quietly slipped away. Grabbing her water pot, she ran as fast as she could toward the river. There, hidden beneath tall trees and soft grass, he was waiting. Prince Ajay. He had climbed over the palace walls, escaping once again while the guards were distracted. The moment he saw Simi emerge from the bushes, his face lit up like a flame in darkness. Simi, he called, his voice warm and full of emotion. I missed you. I was afraid you wouldn't come. I promised you, she replied gently. And I never break my promises. They sat together in the soft grass, hidden beneath the wide leaves of ancient trees. The air was calm, filled with the scent of wild lilies and fresh earth. The river flowed gently beside them. No noise. No pressure. No lies. Just two hearts, beating as one. And there, beneath the cool, whispering shade of the trees, time seemed to stop. The world faded away. The sound of the river softened, the wind slowed, even the birds grew quiet. And in that moment, they kissed. It was Simi's first kiss. The first time she had ever felt the warmth of a man's lips against hers. It sent a spark through her body, like a gentle fire mixed with the sweetness of honey. Her heart raced wildly, her breath caught in her chest, and for a brief, magical moment, she felt as though she was no longer standing on the earth. She was floating. Flying high above the trees, free, light, and completely lost in a feeling she had never known before. Prince Ajay, though she still believed him to be just sturdy, held her gently, his voice soft as he whispered promises into her ears. Promises of a future, of love, of a life far away from pain and expectations. Promises she would never forget. That night, back in the small hut, Adunni sat quietly at the edge of the bed, watching her sister. Something had changed. Sime's eyes were distant, her lips slightly curved as if holding onto a secret she didn't want to share. Simi, Adunni called sharply. Why do you come home so late every day? Her eyes narrowed. Your skin smells like the deep forest, and you have dry seeds tangled in your hair. She leaned forward slightly. Are you still seeing that poor hunter boy? Simi froze. For a moment, she said nothing. Then she spoke softly. He is a good man, Adunni, he treats me like I'm precious gold. Her voice grew stronger. Very precious. Adunni stared directly into her eyes, her expression turning serious, almost cold. Precious, she repeated. She stood up slowly. Simi, listen to me carefully. A hunter is a man who eats today and starves tomorrow. That is not a future, it is suffering. Her voice became firmer. I am going to the palace so I can lift us out of this life. When I become queen, I will find you a real man, a powerful general, or a wealthy chief. She stepped closer. Stop wasting your life in the bushes. You are the sister of a future queen. You must start acting like one. This time, Simi felt something rise inside her. Not fear. Not sadness. Anger. Maybe I don't want a general, she snapped, her voice trembling but strong. Maybe I just want someone who understands me, someone who hears the song in my heart. Adunni's face hardened instantly. You are being childish, she replied sharply. I have protected you since we were children. I fought for you in the market. Everything I do for us. Her voice rose. And now you want to throw it all away, for a man who sleeps in the dirt. She shook her head. Do not let your foolish heart destroy everything. But as Adunni continued speaking, Simi was no longer listening. Her mind had already drifted back to the river, to the warmth of Odi's touch, to the promises he had made beneath the trees. Meanwhile, inside the palace, the truth was fighting to break free. Prince Ajay stood before his father one last time, desperation written all over his face. Father, please, he begged. I have found the girl I love. His voice softened. She is kind, gentle, her voice brings me peace. She is the only one I want. Please, let me marry her instead of the dancer. The king let out a cold, dry laugh. The dancer is the one the people saw, he said harshly. She is the one I promised to the elders. His eyes narrowed. And you want to shame the crown, for some girl you found in the bush? His voice thundered. No. Tomorrow, we go to Babitondi's house. You will wear your crown. You will smile. And you will marry the dancer. He stepped closer, his voice dropping into a dangerous whisper. If you refuse, I will disown you. I will banish you from this kingdom. Silence fell. The prince's fate was sealed. The next day, the day of destiny, arrived. Inside Babitondi's home, joy filled the air. The smell of pounded yam and rich egusi soup drifted through the compound. Women sang loudly, clapping their hands in celebration. Our daughter is going to the palace. She will wear a golden crown. Adunni sat proudly as Simi carefully placed shining beads around her neck. But behind Simi's quiet movements, her heart was restless. Then, a sudden noise. The king is here. The prince has come, voices shouted. The entire compound erupted with excitement. Babatunde rushed forward and bowed deeply. "You are welcome, Kobiyisi," he said with respect. The king nodded, eager to begin. "Bring out the bride," he ordered. "Let my son take his wife." Adunni stepped out of the hut. She walked with grace, her head held high, her presence powerful and radiant. She looked every bit like a queen. Behind her, quiet and almost invisible, walked Simi. Dressed simply, head lowered, hidden in her sister's shadow. Adunni knelt before the king and the prince. "My lord," she said calmly, "I am Adunni. I am ready to be your queen." But then, something changed. The prince's eyes moved. Past Adunni. Past the bride. And landed on the girl standing behind her. Those soft eyes. That quiet presence. The girl from the river. His heart stopped. Then raced. "Simi," he breathed. Suddenly, he stood up. "Simi," he called out loudly. His voice echoed across the silent crowd. Adunni's smile froze. For a moment, she thought he meant her. But he wasn't looking at her at all. Without hesitation, the prince stepped forward, past Adunni, and reached for Simi's hands. "Simi, it's you," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "Why are you standing behind the bride?" Gasps filled the air. Women covered their mouths in shock. The entire village stood frozen. Simi slowly lifted her head. Her eyes met his. She saw the crown. The royal robes. The truth. "You," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You are the prince." The king shot to his feet, his face burning with anger. "Ajay! What madness is this?" he roared. "The dancer is the one you came for." But the prince didn't let go of Simi. His grip tightened. His voice became firm. "No, father," he declared. "This is the girl from the river." He looked into her eyes. "This is the girl I love." "I will not marry the dancer," the prince declared, his voice firm and echoing through the stunned crowd. "I will marry her." It felt as if the world itself cracked open. Silence fell, heavy, suffocating, unreal. Adunni turned slowly toward her sister. But the girl who had once been admired for her beauty was gone. In her place stood someone else. Her face twisted with pain, her eyes burning with betrayal, her lips trembling with a rage so deep it seemed to consume her from within. She looked at the man she had fought for, dreamed of, sacrificed everything for. And he was not looking at her. He was looking at Simi. With love. "Simi," Adunni's voice cut through the air like a blade. "So all those days at the river, you were stealing my husband." "No, no, sister." Simi cried, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't know. I didn't know he was the prince. I thought he was just a hunter." "Liar!" Adunni screamed. Before anyone could react. "Paw!" Her hand struck Simi's face with a force that echoed like thunder. Simi collapsed to the ground, her body shaking, her cheek burning with pain. "Adunni, stop!" Babatunde shouted, rushing forward. But Adunni was beyond reason. "I fought for you," she screamed, her voice breaking with emotion. "I took insults for you. I bled for you. I walked until my feet were raw so we could have a better life." Her finger pointed violently at Simi. "And you quiet little shadow, you went behind my back and used your sweet voice to steal everything from me." "I didn't steal him." Simi sobbed helplessly. "He chose me. Chose you." Adunni hissed, her eyes darkening. "Then he chose a thief." The prince quickly stepped between them, his expression fierce. "Do not touch her again, Adunni." For a moment, everything froze. Adunni looked at him. At Simi. At the villagers, whispering, staring, some even laughing quietly at her humiliation. In that moment, something inside her broke. Completely. The sisterhood was dead. Without another word, Adunni turned and ran. She rushed into the hut, her hands shaking as she grabbed at anything in her path, then she ran again, this time into the forest. As she ran, her wedding beads snapped, scattering across the dusty ground like drops of blood. Back in the compound, chaos remained. The prince tried to speak to Simi, but she was too overwhelmed, too broken to respond. "I need to find her," he said urgently. "Meet me at the river later." And then he was gone. Simi ran. Her heart heavy, her chest tight with guilt and fear. When she reached the river, she saw her. Adunni. Sitting still on a large rock, her back turned, her body unnaturally quiet. "Sister," Simi called softly, stepping closer. "Please, don't be angry. I didn't know. You can have him. I swear." "Shut your mouth." Adunni's voice exploded, no longer human, but something darker, deeper. Simi froze. "You think I want your leftovers?" Adunni growled, slowly turning around. Her eyes were no longer the same. "You think I want to live in your shadow while you wear the crown that should have been mine?" "Adunni, please," Simi whispered, tears falling freely. "I love you." "Love?" Adunni spat. "Love is for fools." She stepped forward slowly. The air around her changed. It grew heavy, thick, carrying a strange smell, like something burning. "You used your voice to trap him," Adunni said coldly. "Let's see if he still loves you when you cannot speak at all." Simi's eyes widened. Before she could move, Adunni swung a heavy stick with all her strength. Crack! The blow landed hard against Simi's back. Pain exploded through her body. And everything went black. Silence. Then, Adunni reached into her cloth and pulled out the small bag. The magic powder. Her hands trembled, not with fear, but with rage. She poured it over Simi's unconscious body. Poof! In an instant, Simi was gone. In her place stood a small, trembling white goat. Adunni stared at it coldly. Without hesitation, she grabbed the goat and threw it into the river. A small splash. Then nothing. But she wasn't done. Adunni opened the bag again. Slowly. Carefully. She poured the powder over herself. The wind rose. Her body shimmered. And within seconds, she transformed. Now, she looked exactly like Simi. Same face. Same eyes. Same gentle beauty. A perfect lie. Just then, the bushes rustled. Adunni turned quickly. A figure ran toward her. It was the prince. "Simi," he called, rushing forward and pulling her into a tight embrace. "I'm so sorry," he said, his voice filled with regret. "I shouldn't have lied to you, please forgive me." Adunni stood still in his arms. Silent. Cold. And hidden behind Simi's face, a dangerous smile slowly formed.